Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today we're going to do a price performance review for the very popular Rolex Daytona reference 116500LN. We're going to do the white dial variant of this watch. This reference was recently discontinued in favor of the new 126500LN. So I think we've got a good opportunity here to really explore a range of pricing that we've seen over the last few years. So as this chart now shows, we're going to start with a period of time of January 2020, which was just before the United States experienced the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're going to run all the way through April of 2023, which would be 1 month after the discontinuation of the 116500LN. In terms of methodology, this data is from Chrono24. I looked at unworn versions of white dial 116500LNs and pulled the information off of their charting. And this was all done on May 2nd, 2023. Sometimes these numbers change in terms of the snapshots. In fact, the last time I did a 116500LN review, and I used the same data source, but most of the numbers were different. They're actually higher now in even the past months than when I last looked at it. So again, methodologies of the site may change, numbers may fluctuate even when we are looking back in time. So just be aware that things aren't always static when we go back and look at prior examinations. Now, this overall chart, you can see basically, even though we've got a $0 y-axis, that the pricing sort of starts in the mid $20,000 range, which is significantly above the price of the Rolex Daytona retail, and then got all the way up to a little under $60,000, and then currently hovers more in that upper $30,000 price point. I think it's easier to understand the graph when we zoom in, so I want to note we're going to go ahead and move forward now. We're no longer using a $0 y-axis, so be aware of that. I don't want anyone to feel like they've been tricked. We're now going to use a floor on the graph of $20,000. We'll still go ahead and keep the $60,000 ceiling, however, given the range of pricing that we'll experience over time. So as noted, we're starting this examination in January of 2020. At that time, according to Chrono24, the market average price for an unworn white dial 116500LN was $25,818. And this price remained fairly consistent for a number of months, even when we jumped to the start of the pandemic, which was March of 2020 for most of the United States. That's when a lot of the lockdowns and stay-at-home orders started to occur. The price was a little bit down from January at $25,675, but it didn't really see a lot of average price differential until the start of 2021. That's when we started to see some significant increasing going on. People are staying at home. People are collecting watches because there's not much else to do. It's also important to remember, other than the first couple of months at the start of the pandemic where the stock markets were unsure of what was going to happen, market performance of the equities was really, really high. There was also really strong performance out of cryptocurrencies. So a lot of people ended up having disposable income and nothing else to do with it. So hobby sort of grew, and watch collecting was one of those. I would also be remiss if I didn't point out that a lot of people also started to get into the watch collecting business as a business in order to flip watches, and certain hype beast style watches, of which the Rolex Daytona is definitely one of them, started to take off in secondhand pricing. The next snapshot of examination I think we need to look at is January 2022. This is actually when Rolex increased the retail price of the 116500LN. In fact, it went up a lot, 10.6%. The price retail before then was $13,150 US. This moved it to $14,550 US. And as you can see, at the start of that period, we were at a $43,071 secondhand price for the watch. So it had already gone up quite a bit since the start of the pandemic, roughly $18,000 at that point. But as you can see, the line graph goes way up after the retail price increase kicked in. We actually reached peak price for the Daytona 116500LN in March of 2022. This is true for a lot of hype watches. This was when the bubble started to, if not burst, deflate. But, of course, before it goes down, it must go up. And at this point, $56,231 was the average pricing that we were seeing on Chrono24. What then followed was a fairly consistent decline. In fact, the Daytona dropped by over $1,000 in market average price month on month until September of 2022, where it dropped by just under $1,000. And then October 2022, it only dropped by a few hundred more. The declines accelerated slightly for December and January, and then it started to turn around. And as you can see, the line graph starts to go back up. So what changed as of January? Because normally we're past the holiday shopping season, and you wouldn't necessarily think that it would be time for price increases to happen on the secondhand market. But what's important to note is there was another retail price increase by Rolex. In this case, it was much more modest. They increased the price by 1.7%, moving that retail price from the $14,550 that we talked about earlier to the new price of $14,800. Just like we saw with the prior retail price increase, when the retail price goes up on Rolex, it seems to be standard practice that the secondhand market will likewise increase their prices. The increases have been relatively modest, so January 2023 started at $35,318 as a market average. February was $35,903, so it went up about $600. March was $36,698, so about $800 more than the February market average. And then April 2023 is $37,288, or roughly $600 more than March. Now, that's not the only thing that has happened in April, which would be the discontinuation of the 116500LN with Rolex's new Daytona model, the 126500LN, which has, incidentally, a $15,100 retail price point. Now, technically, the replacement Daytona was announced in March. However, I believe that happened on or around March 27th. So by and large, the market average information we have on Chrono 24 involving March is going to be prior to seeing this new version of the Daytona. That being said, it is worth noting that many collectors were well aware or were highly anticipating that Rolex for the anniversary was going to do something with the Rolex Daytona. And that, of course, came to fruition. So I think this is a good ending point because April 2023 being my last data point is the first month where the 116500LN was completely discontinued. And one is going to start to question what's actually happening in the market secondhand for the 126500LN. And of course, how that performance is going to influence this now prior iteration, just like how the 116500 had an impact on prior versions of what happened with older Daytonas that preceded it. So in terms of sort of summary snapshot information, the final retail price for the Rolex Daytona 116500LN was $14,800. It reached its peak price point in my examination period back in March of 2022 when it was $56,231 as a market average. The current price as of April 2023 was $37,288. Which means that the current price of the 116500LN is about 34% less than what the peak price was over a year ago, but 44% higher than the start of the examination period, which is a reminder, January 2020. And the difference between the current April 2023 market price and the final retail price is about 152% than what the watch retails for. So what happens with the Daytona 116500LN from here? I would assume, and obviously that's all I can do at this point, that we will see a gradual increase in the pricing as time goes by. Obviously, they aren't making any more 116500s. That being said, specification-wise, the 126500 is a superior watch. Now, there are some aesthetic differences. Some people are going to prefer the older model. Some people might prefer some of the looks of the newer model. And that can play a role in terms of the pricing. But it's not that different looking of a watch overall, especially at a distance. And I note that because I think even retail price changes on the 126500 are going to still have an impact on the secondhand pricing of the 116500. So all things being equal, as Rolex continues to raise retail prices on Daytonas, I think we'll see historic Daytona models that are still quote-unquote modern Daytonas kind of go up along with that. We can't confirm that, even though we saw that happen with the January 2023 price increase retail and then the corresponding market average price increase, because the watch was still being made at that point. But I think by January 2024, I'm going to guess Rolex is going to do another retail price increase on their new Daytona. And at that point, or within a couple months after that, I bet we'll see at least a corresponding percentile increase in market average pricing on this older 116500LN. But anyway, that's what I have for you for the price performance on the Rolex Daytona 116500LN. Please comment below with any thoughts you have about the analysis or what you think is going to happen. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like. And if you want to be notified when I release new videos, just click that subscribe button. Take care, everybody.